Thank you. God, you're such a great bunch of people. You really are. It's a pleasure playing for you. It really is.
I was listening to BBC Six Music and they said David Bowie had died. It was a Monday morning. For the rest of the day I listened to the radio. I ended up writing an article about the different ways the news had been broken on the radio. I ended up writing a blog about the way I was feeling, kind of focusing on the different ways the news had been broken on different radio stations. I don't really write blogs that often, but sometimes you just find yourself writing things down, and I put it up on my website, and a few people seemed to like it, and I got on with the rest of my day, like a lot of people, listening to Bowie and hearing what people had to say about him and reading articles and just thinking the words, David Bowie, David Bowie. A couple of people who had read my Bowie words emailed me. Some people wanted to share their own feelings or memories or to link to something they'd written themselves. People like to share things during sad times. I read lots of these other blogs. It felt a nice thing to do. And I got an email from someone called Heidi.
Hi, John. I've just read your blog about David Bowie. It's all so strange, isn't it? I bought his new album yesterday, Black Star, and I was about to listen to it on my headphones on my way to work this morning, but then I heard the news on the radio. The whole day was so strange. I sat at my desk and I didn't do any work. I don't think anyone in our office did. We were all in a daze. It made me think about the David Bowie fan club I used to be in. Anyway, I just thought I'd say hi. Hope you're doing okay on this horrible day. Bowie fans stick together, innit? Heidi.
I emailed back. Can you tell me more about the David Bowie fan club, please? I kind of feel like I want to know more.
Okay. I was about 14. My dad used to get Record Collector magazine. One day he showed me an advert in the classified section. I'm going to buy that record player for your mum's birthday. Do you think she'll like it? I looked. She definitely wouldn't. She didn't want a record player. But I said, yeah, go for it. It looked nice. He left the page open for me, and further down the column was an advert for a David Bowie fan club. To join it, you had to write to an address and they'd send you a magazine for free. So I wrote down the address, found an envelope and a stamp, and a few days later a brown envelope with my name on it arrived. I opened it up, but it wasn't a magazine. It was some badly stapled pieces of folded A4 with just one long piece called Why I Like David Bowie. There were some drawings of David Bowie too. On the back it said a year's subscription was £3. So I found some pound coins and a jiffy bag and sent it off, and a few weeks later another fanzine arrived. I had to keep it a secret from my mum and dad. I don't think this is what I was supposed to be doing with my pocket money. I loved David Bowie though, and this was 1996, and it was the only way of getting any information about him. My dad was a fan of David Bowie's music, but he didn't know anything more than the words in the choruses. Life on Mars, Jean Jeannie, do-do-do-do. Jean Jeannie, do-do-do-do. He drove me crazy because he'd always sing Ziggy played the guitar, and I'd say, Dad, it's not the, it's Ziggy played guitar. And he'd say, that's what I said, Ziggy played the guitar. Dad. The Best of David Bowie was the only tape he had in his car, and we listened to it over and over on long car journeys until my mum would say, I think it's time for some quiet now. And although it's a good tape, it didn't quite have the nuances and background information I was starting to crave. And he didn't even have the second cassette, there was only sides 1 and 2. This fan club was perfect for my Bowie obsession to fully flourish. It was the first time I'd heard all about the Ziggy Stardust character and his different colour eyes and the order of the albums. You can't really be a fan of someone until you know which order their albums were released. I loved looking at the artwork of my dad's Bowie records, and I taught myself how to use the record player, and I'd listen to the albums cross-legged in the corner of our front room. David Bowie was the only real pop star I knew about. When I was 13, I went to a fancy dress party at my friend's birthday party, and my dad painted my face like the Aladdin Sane album cover, a red zigzag across my cheek. No one at the party had any idea who I was supposed to be. I felt really left out. First prize and third prize both went to people dressed as Banana Man, and the second prize went to a little girl dressed as Uncle Albert from Only Fools and Horses. She wore her normal clothes just with a big white fake beard on a piece of elastic. I cried, and when my dad picked me up, instead of taking us back home, he took me to the pub where his friend Don worked. We went there lots. Don always gave me a big bowl of ice cream from the kitchen, and we walked in and he saw my face and said, "Oh, cool, Aladdin Sane." And my dad said, "See, there's always someone on your side eventually. There's always someone who will get it." That's how I felt when I saw the advert in the back of Record Collector. This is made by someone else who gets it. A brand new fanzine came about once every month, and whenever a new one arrived, I'd read every word. It was clearly just done by one person who wrote it all in biro, and they didn't even have particularly neat handwriting. There's always a story, often set in space. There were pictures. There was a David Bowie word search, a really good one. My favourite thing was the lyrics page. Songs randomly chosen and written out. I guess by someone pressing pause, then writing down a line from the song, then pressing play to write down the next one. Play and pause and rewind. That was the first time I knew the words to any song. For the first time I realised what the songs were about.
News had just come over. We had 5 years left to cry in. News guy wept and told us Earth was really dying. Cried so much his face was wet. Then I knew he was not lying. Look out your window, I can see his light. If we can sparkle, he may land tonight. Don't tell your papa, or he'll get us locked up in fright. Though I'm past 100,000 miles, I'm feeling very still. And I think my spaceship knows which way to go. Tell my wife I love her very much. She knows.
I was starting to understand them. It made me fall in love with the songs even more. Then one day there was a full-page wax crayon drawing of a field, a hamper, a rug, a stick man playing guitar. It said, "The first ever David Bowie fan club picnic, Saturday the 8th of August, Battersea Park, South London." I was 15. I'd never been to London before, but I was determined to go. Maybe I'd meet other people who loved David Bowie as much as I did. I went on my own. I didn't have many friends. People who go to fan club picnics advertised in the back of fanzines rarely do. London was a long way away. We lived about 15 miles from Manchester, and even going there felt like an epic mission. This was like going to the other side of the world. I pretended to my mum and dad I was going to London because I wanted to go to the Science Museum, and to my amazement they said, yeah, I could go as long as I was careful. I've always been obsessed with science, so they seemed to believe that's why I was going. I'd found a book about London in the library, and I worked out my route. How to get to Battersea Park, and I was so worried I'd get my rucksack stolen. We'd all heard scary stories about London all our lives. My dad drove me to the train station and went in with me to make sure I booked the right tickets and knew which platform to go to, and he said he'd pick me up when my train came back at 9:41 p.m. He said, "Have fun at the Science Museum and remember what I told you about your rucksack." I felt so guilty lying to my parents. I'd never told them a lie before. Not even a small one. I'd never needed to. But I wasn't exactly going to say, I've joined a David Bowie picnic cult. I negotiated the London Underground clinging onto my rucksack so tightly, with the straps the wrong way round so I could keep my eye on the zips. My bag was full of crisps from the shop next to the train station and a flask of Ribena I'd bought with me from home. It took me such a long time to find Battersea that I only had about an hour before I'd have to go back again, and I'd almost given up hope of finding anyone in the park. It was so full. But then I heard changes playing from a ghetto blaster, and I looked across and there were a few people sitting in a circle and a very fat man had a Bowie t-shirt on, so I walked across. They looked up and seeing that I had a copy of the fanzine in my hand, they said, "Hey, another one, come join us, sit down." I sat down. The man in a Bowie t-shirt said he was called Davo and he offered me one of his sausage rolls. I had been expecting loads of people in Ziggy Stardust face paint and labyrinth costumes, but it was just 7 men and 1 lady dressed normally. All grown-ups apart from me. On the train down there, I'd been worried there might be hundreds of people, or maybe just 1 other person. So I guess I was happy with 8. They told me to pour the crisps into a big Tupperware bowl that was already overflowing with Monster Munch and salt and vinegar twirls and squares all mixed up together. That was my favourite part of the day. I'd never seen so many crisps all in one place. The man next to Davo said he was Bob, and I said hi. I was Heidi. He said it was a shame. If he'd known someone my age was coming, he'd have let his daughter come too, who was about the same age, and we could have made friends. She'll be all bored at home on her own. He said it must be boring to just hear old men talk to each other. I liked it though. For quite a long time I didn't say anything, but I was quite happy listening to Bob and Davo talk. They were really funny. They knew loads about David Bowie. Loads. They told stories and I sat there drinking my Ribena. More people came later in the day, all of them with massive bags of picnic crisps. Never take crisps to a David Bowie fan club picnic. There'll be plenty there already. After a while, Davo said, "So who's the person behind all this? Anyone got any idea? Is it one of you guys?" And Bob said, "Well, I thought it was you." And Davo said, "Well, I thought it was you." And he opened up the biggest bottle of cider I'd ever seen in my life. "I guess it's a mystery," said Bob. I started to feel guilty and I thought maybe everyone thought it was me. We were none the wiser. Pretty soon it was time to go home. Bob was the only one to say bye. I got the train and met my dad and told him how much I had loved the Science Museum. Even though the picnic hadn't been anything like I thought it would be, I couldn't stop grinning. I'd had an adventure.
All the strangers came today, and it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, you pretty things, don't you know you're driving your fathers and mothers insane? Oh, you pretty things, don't you know you're driving your fathers and mothers insane?
After the picnic, fanzines kept coming. One day it arrived and it was printed on glossy paper. Then there was an even more exciting development. Whoever was behind the whole David Bowie fan club had managed to get hold of some kind of word processor, so it wasn't handwritten anymore, apart from the word search that was still in pen, which made it easier to read everything, and the following summer there was an advert for the 2nd ever David Bowie fan club picnic. I was desperate to go, and I was 16, so I thought I'd tell the truth. I said to my dad, "I want to go to London next Saturday. I'm part of a David Bowie fan club, and everyone's meeting up, and I'd really like to go too." My dad weighed it up, moving his head from side to side, and said, "Okay, you can go. But I'm coming too. I'll clear it with your mum. We'll tell her it's a father-daughter adventure." I think he was glad I wanted to go out and meet people. I know he worried about me, constantly on my own, doing nothing but writing things down in my diary and listening to music on my headphones. He knew I was totally happy and content with the solitude, but it can't have been nice for him. "Have you got any friends?" he asked me once, joking, but it felt awkward when my response was a shrug of the shoulders. "Not really." We talked about the trip a couple more times over the next week. My dad said it would be silly to go all that way and back in one day, so he booked us a twin room near Battersea Park and said he trusted me to go to the picnic on my own. "Don't worry, I won't be an embarrassing dad, but I'll be around the corner, just in case." He said he wanted to go to London anyway. He wanted to check out the Science Museum, as I'd been so enthusiastic about it last time. So we went to London. Me and him, both of us carefully guarding our rucksacks for the whole journey. We checked into a bed and breakfast on Lavender Hill, around the corner from the picnic park, and he went off to the Science Museum, and I went to the park with instructions to be back in the room at 10 p.m. at the latest, and to be a good girl and not let him down, otherwise we'd both be in trouble. There were more people at this picnic, and Davo remembered me from last time and said, "This is Heidi, everyone." And Bob was there too, and like he promised, he brought along his daughter. "This is Jade," he said. I went to sit next to Jade. Some guy had a guitar, and after a while he started playing some Bowie songs. And there was a cooler box full of bottles of beer, and I'd never really drunk beer before, but Bob asked if I wanted one, and I said yes please. More and more people joined the picnic. There was the conversation again. So who's the person behind all this? Who's the dude who's sending out the fanzines? But still no one owned up. No one had a clue. The guitar was passed around, and as the sun started to set, the fan club picnic was attracting passers-by, who were all told, "Come and join us, grab a beer." And soon there was a campfire too, and practically everyone within 5 miles of Battersea Park was singing David Bowie songs together.
We play guitar, jamming good with Weird and Gilly. Spiders from Mars, he played it left hand, but made it too far. Became the special man, then we were Ziggy's band.
And Jade and I joined in. We were having such a fun time together, drinking beer, and she put a blanket over our knees, and soon her hand was holding my hand and it stayed there. After a while, she said we should go for a walk. Walking around Battersea Park, she said, "If this is too weird, just say so," but I felt exactly the same too. After our walk, we went back to the picnic, but I looked at the time on the watch on her wrist and said, "I'm really sorry, but I've got to go." She seemed disappointed, but I told her about my dad and our twin beds and said, "I'm really sorry." We wrote each other's addresses in the back of each other's notebooks, and we made sure her dad wasn't looking, and kissed and said, "Let's meet up again." My first ever kiss with my first ever friend.
I absolutely love you. But we're absolutely gonna. Well, if my love is your love, we're certain to succeed.
At 9:58, I opened the door to our room, and my dad was watching Ace Ventura on the B&B telly with a Newton's cradle on the table in front of him. "I love that Science Museum," he said, watching the balls bump into each other, absorbed by their momentum. "Science is so clever. Look, I got one for you too." He pointed at the floor where there was a Newton's cradle in its box next to his bum bag. Early birthday present. Then he looked at me properly and let out a laugh. "Someone's had a good time," he said, and whether my glow was from Jade or from the beer or the campfire, he could tell something was going on. I said, "Yeah, I had the best time." And I told him about the crisps and the nice people and the guitar, and he said, "Well, that sounds like it was a fun night." I said, "It still is a fun night. They're all still out there singing songs." And he said, "Really? Songs? Well, maybe we should go and join them. Do you want to?" so I didn't even take my shoes off. He switched off Ace Ventura, touched the Newton's cradle with both index fingers until the balls were completely stationary, and put his top on. Come on, let's go and join this David Bowie picnic. Ziggy played the guitar. Dad! It was completely dark when we got back to the park. When she saw me, Jade mouthed, "Oh my God," and we both smiled and bit our lips. I said to Davo, "This is my dad," and my dad helped himself to a beer. And soon he was so engrossed with singing songs and telling strangers what he thought about David Bowie, did you know he's got different colour eyes, and asking when it was his turn to have a go on the guitar, that Jade and I could easily sneak off again, completely undetected by the grown-ups, and had another walk around the park for bonus extra time to make the evening last longer. I wonder if my dad knew exactly what I was doing. Almost certainly not. But who knows? I like to think maybe he did sense there was a reason I wanted to go back to the picnic. We went back to join the others, and I sat next to my dad around the campfire. After a while, people started to leave to get the trains and buses, so we all said goodbye, and people swapped phone numbers and addresses and made promises to stay in touch, and Jade and I said bye to each other like we were just normal friends, but deep down we knew it was so much more. When we got back to the B&B, I just told him, "Dad, there was a girl there tonight. She's called Jade, and I think I really like her. And I think she likes me too, and we've both got the same favourite David Bowie album." I'd known for a while I was going to have to talk to my parents about the way I was feeling. I'd been really scared about how to do it, but then one night, Philadelphia was on TV, and I saw my dad crying at the end when Tom Hanks dies, and I thought, well, maybe this won't be as hard as I thought. My dad seemed different after watching Philadelphia. I noticed he moderated the kind of language he used, shouting at the television when he was watching the football. Maybe him and my mum knew all along. My dad leant over to give me a hug. He said he was delighted. He said, "You must have the most wonderful feeling inside. I had that when I first met your mum." So, yeah. If it hadn't been for that David Bowie fan club picnic, I would never have met the person who meant the most to me in the world, and I would never have had that weekend with my dad.
Heidi and I exchanged a couple more emails, but that was pretty much the end of her David Bowie picnic story. 2016 had started off in such a horrible way, and it didn't get much better. Bad things kept happening. Each month seemed sadder and sadder, and then strange and terrifying and horrible, and then just sad again. And you put on the news and someone else is paying tribute to another person you loved who has died, and you think, have these people not seen Weekend at Bernie's? Can't we keep our heroes alive for longer? Occasionally, if people did mention David Bowie, I would tell them about Heidi and her David Bowie fan club picnics. I wanted to know more, so I emailed her again. "Hi Heidi, what happened to the David Bowie fan club? Were there more picnics? What happened with you and Jade? I hope it's okay, but I keep telling people your story. Can you tell me some more, please?"
Okay. Jade and I saw each other a few times over the next year. It was hard because we were so far apart, but we talked on the phone every night, and we wrote each other letters and made each other CDs. It was a hard year. My parents broke up that year, and I did so badly in all my exams. But Jade and I went to the next David Bowie fan club picnic together, as a couple, with both our dads. That was the last David Bowie picnic I went to, though. We were together for 18 months when Jade met someone else. It was completely amicable. Sort of. We lost touch. I've not heard from her since. But I've been thinking of her a lot since hearing the news that David Bowie had died. That day was the moment I felt I wish she was here with me. As soon as my dad heard, he phoned me. He lives in Croatia, where he tries but fails to sell property. He lives with his new partner and their 11-year-old, Stan. He wanted to check I was okay. He couldn't believe the news. He told me his band were going to do a cover of a Bowie song in tribute at their gig at the Irish Bar on Friday night. We all respond in our own way, I guess. I do keep thinking about Jade and all the others at the David Bowie fanclub picnic on Battersea Park. Davo and Bob and the guy with the guitar. It's weird. I still haven't listened to Black Star. Feels too sad to press play.
I emailed again. Is there any way you can get in touch with the others? Or even just Jade? Oh, and what happened with the fanzines? Do you still get them? Did you ever find out who was behind it all?
I can't contact Jade. The only email address I have for Jade is her old university email, which won't be active anymore. I've possibly got a home address somewhere, in a notebook, in a shoebox, in a suitcase, under a bed. Maybe. I'm not sure she'd want to hear from me anyway. The fanzines stopped in 2012. I paid my £3 every year, but they were becoming less and less frequent. Then one time it arrived, and on the back page it said, "There won't be any more magazines, but making these has been the happiest thing I've ever done in my life. Keep on enjoying David Bowie." We never found out who it was. I asked Jade if her dad knew, but genuinely no one had a clue. We don't know if that person ever came to the picnics. I hope so.
A few weeks later, Heidi emailed me again.
Hey, guess what? I thought you might want to know. I did end up finding Jade's address. I wrote to her and she emailed back. We've been emailing and last night we ended up talking on the phone, just like the old days. We ended up talking about David Bowie. She said she'd found it too hard to listen to the last David Bowie album too. It was too much to deal with. She said she didn't want to hear it on her own. So we've decided that on Tuesday the 10th of January, the anniversary of hearing the news that David Bowie had died, we'll both take the day off work, put on lots of jumpers, pack a blanket and some food, and we'll both go to London and meet up in that same corner of Battersea Park. And we'll listen to Black Star all the way through, together, just me and her. I don't know what else will happen, but I think that's what I've been waiting for all along. I can't wait to see her. Oh, and last night Jade admitted it was her dad who sent out the David Bowie fanzines. She'd known the whole time, of course. She'd even helped him put them into envelopes. He made a promise never to tell anyone, especially not Davo. Her dad just liked the mystery, and so did she, and it helped him through some hard times. She never did tell anyone, but she said she thinks her dad would be happy for me to know. I can't wait to see her again. Me and her sitting in the park, listening to David Bowie. I'll let you know how it goes. Maybe.
Cold fire, you got everything but cold fire. You will be my rest and peace, child. I moved up to take a place.
This was recorded by me, John Osborne, and Laura Woodward, with thanks to Kate Roma at Future Radio.
Tried. It's a trick to make you see wide. It can all but break your heart in pieces. Staying back in your memory are the movies in the dark. How you move is all it takes to sing a song of when I loved the prettiest star. In your takes to sing a song of when I loved the prettiest star. One day, though it might as well be someday, you will rise up high and take us all away, all because of what you are, the prettiest star.